News comes out, Trump's being banned permanently by Twitter. Jack Dorsey announces that. Then it's Facebook. They don't say permanently, but they're kind of taking him down for now. YouTube says for now, but we'll see what's going to happen in the future. The only one that used the word permanently is Dorsey on Twitter. Okay. And, you know, you've been in the space of creating content for a while. Some of the stuff you've said, it's upset a few people. You had one legendary interview that did very well, where the lady was trying to spook you, and then next thing you know, it backfired on her, and you asked her a question, and you said gotcha, and that kind of led to, you know, all these different things. And even some of the things that was going on in Toronto when you were a teacher, there was some challenges there were transgender, whatever was going on, and you came out and spoke up, and there was some kind of a debate that came up from that. But Trump being banned, Alex Jones a few years ago, Twitter, YouTube, InfoWars, hey, they're coming after you, they're doing this. Okay. What was your reaction when you heard about the fact that the 45th president of the United States was being banned permanently in a very powerful virtual government called Twitter?
Well, I thought that the companies who are doing such things have no idea what responsibility they're taking on. Because now they've announced their willingness, or maybe even their responsibility, depending on how you look at it, to police the content of what's being exchanged on their networks. Well, that's a rabbit hole that you, in all likelihood, don't want to go down. So you see attempts to censor emerging quite constantly now, and it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's very upsetting that this happened to the president, to an elected president.
What's the, if you're someone who's well read, you've read history, what has been the consequences of silencing someone that has a big following? Who ends up paying a price long term? Is it the individual that silenced a Trump? Is it his following? Or is it the silencer who eventually created more enemies that backfired on them long term? Who ends up losing long term?
Well, everybody does, I would say, because the classic defense for free speech is that, you know, if you limit someone's free speech, not only do you limit the rights of the person who's speaking, but you limit the rights of those who could have heard. And it seems to me that I believe that people have the intelligence to make up their own minds, and that they should have the information presented to them. My experience has been that people are far more intelligent and perspicacious than we generally assume. They come to the right conclusions. Who's to say? But, you know, I don't think there's anything more important than freedom of speech. So
maybe let me ask the question a different way. So we have a lot of different issues that's being talked about right now. Things are interchanged, and obviously we've kind of known what direction we're going. We have Joe Biden as our president.
I'd rather hear what Trump is thinking than not. I'd rather know than not. I'd rather see what's happening out in the public than not. I don't know what's going on underground now. I have no idea. And I know that, and no one knows what the impact of this has been on all the people who supported Trump. What are they supposed to conclude precisely from this? I'd rather these things were out in the open. I don't think that these companies had the right to do what they did. They had the right legally. They had the right, obviously, because they did it and they got away with it. But, you know, there's a technological problem at the bottom of it too. We have all these new communication technologies, and we don't really know what the rules are. No, none of us do, including the people who run these social networks. It's not like they understand what they've created. How could you? No one can understand them, what you've created. You know, I was just talking to Michael Mellis the other day about 4chan. 4chan had some effect on the Hillary-Trump election. It's possible that 4chan tilted the election in favor of Trump because the margin was pretty small. But in any case, 4chan, in some sense, doesn't even exist. There's no centralized authority. There's no administrative bureaucracy. You can post there anonymously and your posts disappear. Well, we don't know anything about how to regulate a communications apparatus like that, or even how it should be regulated in principle, or even what it does or what it is. And so I have some sympathy for the giant media corporations because they're dealing with intractable problems. But I still believe that the censorship road is, well, it's likely to lead to a place that people don't want to go. So,
which is what?
Well, part of it's second guessing. You want to be able to say what you think. And if you have the voice of a hypothetical censor in your head, I mean, I've experienced this already. I've had guests on my show, like Abigail Schreier, who wrote a book on the trans issue, trans surgery in particular, gender reassignment surgery. And I was very nervous about having the discussion. So there was the little sensor inside my head already operating. And when enough sensors operate in your head, then you can no longer think. And if you can no longer think, well, then you can't see and you're blind and you stumble into holes, and everyone stumbles into holes, and that's not good. And I've said over and over that if you're discussing something that matters, the probability that you're going to offend someone rises to virtual certainty. If the discussion you're having about an important issue isn't of sufficient potency to offend someone, then you're not saying anything at all. Well, then how many people should you offend, or can you offend before you're properly banned? You can say, well, a line was crossed because the president of the United States fomented armed insurrection. Well, had the situation been not clear, he would have been impeached. So there's ambiguity around the circumstances. And, well, a line was obviously crossed. Well, what line exactly? And who's going to decide when it's crossed? Exactly. And this is very troublesome, but it's a problem we all have. Like, it's not a problem, in some sense, it's not a problem that Jack Dorsey has or Mark Zuckerberg. They're facing the same set of issues that the rest of it are facing. I mean, they have more authority over their platform, obviously, but it's not like there's a bunch of us out here who have the answer and they could just come asking. We're all facing this mystery, which is what our technological transformation of our means of communication, what it means and what we should do with it. It's very complicated. What should we do with, you're trying to answer that question all the time. What should you do with your podcast? What should you do with your YouTube channel? It's complicated. You have unlimited bandwidth and you have the opportunity to do anything you want and share it with hundreds of thousands of people. Okay, what should you do? You have enough money. And so, because one simple answer to a problem is, well, I'll do what makes money. It's like, okay, well, now you have the money. Okay, now what should you do? Well, it's complicated. Yep. It's really complicated. And so we need to talk about what we should do. And we are, in fact, doing that. So
that's right.
So that seems to be working.
So let me ask you this. Today, I feel like every decade, every era, there's a different set of problems. I don't even think it's an era. I think it's decade. Like, maybe.
Sorry. I'd like to sit down with Trump and talk to him like I'm talking to you, because I want to know. I'd like to know what he's thinking. And I think everybody should know what he's thinking. And it isn't obvious to me that I could do a YouTube interview with Donald Trump and have it aired. And that seems to be a problem, because don't we want to know what he's thinking? Don't we want everyone else to see what he's thinking? Whether you're a foe or a friend, well, we should know. And I've been inviting politicians onto my show. It's like, come on for 2 hours and let's have a talk. It's not sound bites. It's an opportunity for you to reveal yourself. Can you? Will you? What happens when you do?
So if you like this little short clip from an interview I did, click over here to watch the entire interview. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.